Hey guys, Jake here, coming at you with another math lesson today. Today we're going to be talking about how to use the limit definition of a derivative to find the derivative of a function. So today we're moving into the Foundation of Differentiation chapter of the Elite Guide to AP Calculus AB. Go check that out. You can scan the QR code in the upper right hand corner of your screen or check out the link in the description below or the pinned comment. But we're going to start working on talking about derivatives now. The last few videos I've made were kind of talking about limits and continuity, but now we're kind of moving on to derivatives. So we're going to start with this problem here, and I think this is an important one because it is, it's important to understand where the kind of definition of what a derivative is and where it comes from. And of course, on the AP test, you're going to have to be able to use this limit definition to find a derivative potentially. So we're going to start with this problem here. Keep in mind, this is not a terribly difficult example of applying the limit definition of a derivative. However, I think using this limit definition of derivatives can sometimes be quite challenging, especially when you're first learning it. So I wanted to start with a more kind of straightforward example rather than diving into one that's super complicated and a really hard limit to find. But I also want to point out, unless the problem's asking you to use the limit definition to find a derivative of a function, it's pretty uncommon that that's going to be the best or the easiest way to find the derivative of a function. A lot of the stuff that you learn throughout AP Calculus is really geared towards giving you other tools, shortcuts, tricks that are easier to find the derivative of a function than using this definition, limit definition. So it is important to know, though, you might be asked to actually use it on the AP test. So you do need to know it either way, but it's not like you're going to be using it all the time to find derivatives. But let's go ahead and jump in here. So first of all, I do just want to kind of give what that limit definition of a derivative is. So in general, if we have some function f of x, or in this case we have y equals x squared plus 2, you could kind of interchange y and f of x, obviously. But if we have some function f of x, then we know the derivative of that function would be denoted as f prime of x, and that would just be the limit and now there's kind of a couple different ways you might see this. First, I want to introduce one that is seen a little bit less commonly, but I think it helps to understand what this limit definition is actually saying. So I'm going to say the limit as delta x goes to 0. And then the thing we're taking the limit of is f of x plus delta x minus f of x all over delta x. So the reason I like this delta x one, what delta x kind of represents is the change in x, is what that delta sign means, change. Delta x is change in x. So in other words, what we're looking at here, let's say you have some function that just has some sort of curvature like this. A derivative represents the slope of the tangent line to that function. So let's just say we're imagining some tangent line. That was a very bad drawing. So let's imagine this tangent line, which intersects with our function at this one point. This tangent line has the same slope as our function at this point. F prime is the derivative of f. That represents whatever the slope of our function is for any x value that we plug in, essentially. So the reason why I think this delta x kind of comes in handy to kind of understand what's happening here, basically what it is measuring is, instead of thinking of it as a tangent line and a line that's just intersecting with your function at one point, think of it as a secant line. So a secant line would intersect with your function at two different points, right? So it would go through these two different points like this. The slope of this line right here would be the slope of the secant line. We would just simply find that by looking at basically this x value and this y value. We'll call it x1, y1, and x2, y2. You could just calculate the slope between those 2 points using the slope formula, right? y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, which another way to think of y2 minus y1 is the change in y, so the delta y essentially, the change in how many units you're going up to get from point 1 to point 2, and then x2 minus x1 is just the difference between the x values, the change in x, so that would be delta x. So the distance between, the x distance between the 2 points. So change in y, delta y, and then delta x, change in x. Rise over run is slope, right? Rise is your change in y, the difference between the heights of those points, and then the change in x is the run, the difference between the x coordinates of those. So change in y over change in x, or delta y over delta x, gives you rise over run, which is what slope represents. So the reason why I like this notation is what it's essentially saying is, okay, we're still going to take this secant line like this, but now instead of, this secant line, let's imagine that this point right here is moving closer and closer to our first point. So now, you could imagine a secant line through that point, and then a secant line through that point. And imagine it's getting closer and closer and closer until eventually it's so close that it is almost touching this first point. I'm not going to be able to really draw it to, very well, but the idea is imagine that this second point moves so close to this first point that they're infinitely close to each other. They're not exactly touching each other, but they're infinitely close to each other. That secant line would be a very, very, very good approximation for the tangent line. And as this second point got closer and closer to that first point, that approximation of the secant line would get closer and closer to the actual tangent line. So that's why we're saying the limit as delta x is going to 0. The limit as this second point gets closer and closer and closer to the first point, or in other words, the value of the slope of that secant line as those 2 points, the distance between them is approaching 0. So that might be a little bit better way to think of it. And that's exactly where this fraction comes from. It's basically just saying, what is the y value, the 2 y values that we're looking at essentially. So like you could think of this as y2, and then think of this as y1. And the reason why that is because you're saying the output we get from plugging some x value plus a very, very small number that's approaching 0 into your function f, and then subtracting the value you get out of your function f just by plugging in that x value. So basically, this x plus delta x is a number that is just a teeny, 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 tiny bit bigger than x, because delta x is getting closer and closer to 0. So all that is to say basically that this is your y2, that is a very close y value to f of x, and the f of x plus delta x minus f of x is essentially just measuring the vertical distance, the y distance, the rise, how many units we go up to get from the first point to the second point. And then same idea here. On the denominator, we have delta x essentially represents x2 minus x1. Like this whole denominator here is the delta x. So as that is getting closer and closer, from those 2 points getting closer and closer to each other, the horizontal distance is getting closer and closer to 0. So this basically is just a fraction which represents rise over run, the slope between 2 points as those 2 points move closer and closer to each other. But because it's f of x plus delta and f of x on the numerator, that basically guarantees that the points are kind of moving closer to each other, but also on the path of whatever this function f of x is. So moving kind of along our f of x like this was here in this example. So that's where this difference quotient limit derivative comes from. Now, the way that you'll typically see it actually written out is instead of delta x, people oftentimes will just write h instead. So let's change that. So as your h goes to 0, this is the limit that we're evaluating to find the derivative. So let's get into how to actually do that. So really, in order to actually set this limit up, all we're doing is taking whatever our function f of x is, plugging in x plus h, plugging in x, and then finding the difference between those, and then putting it all over h. So you're basically just using this formula. So f of x plus h is just whatever you'd get from taking x plus h in parentheses. That's a common mistake I see people make. Make sure you put that x plus h in parentheses, and then go to your function f of x, replace the x with x plus h. So that would be x plus h squared plus 2. And then minus your entire function f of x. And again, make sure you put your entire function f of x in parentheses. That's another common mistake I see people make. And I'll explain what the issue that causes in just a second. But make sure you put your entire function f of x, x squared plus 2 in this case, in parentheses. And the reason why you want to make sure you put that in parentheses is this negative sign needs to distribute. So if you have multiple terms in your function, not putting parentheses there is going to get you the wrong thing. And then you put it all over h. So now what you typically want to do is look at how you can simplify this fraction, because you can see if we just kind of imagine plugging in h for 0, doesn't really matter what happens up here up top, we're going to end up getting a 0 on the denominator. You can't divide by 0, so that's a problem. So let's just think about how to kind of simplify out this numerator here. So we first can kind of deal with the x plus h squared part, and then we can also distribute this negative term. So if we do that, we're going to get, remember, x plus h squared is the same as x plus h times x plus h. You cannot just simply distribute the squared and get x squared plus h squared. That will not be correct. You need to write it out as x plus h times x plus h, and then FOIL it. So do the x times x times h times x, and h times h. Doing all that will give you x squared plus xh plus another xh, so plus 2xh plus h squared. And then we have our plus 2 here. Then we can distribute the negative sign, so we get minus x squared, and then minus 2, and that's all over h. And then you can see we're going to have some stuff cancel out here. So we have an x squared right here and a minus x squared right here. Those are going to cancel out. We have a plus 2, and a minus 2. Those are going to cancel out. And now we just have 2xh plus h squared on the numerator. So once you kind of expand everything out, combine like terms, simplify it that way, what you're very frequently going to see in these problems is try to factor out an h somehow. That's a very common way to go about these problems. It's not always going to play out that way, but that's a good thing to look for, because that's a lot of times how they end up playing out. It certainly is how they're going to play out every time your function is a polynomial. So let's factor out the h, because this 2xh and h squared term, every term left up on the numerator has an h in it. So we can just factor out the h, pull the h out of the numerator. 2xh, if we pull the h out, that just leaves us with 2x. And then h squared, if we pull one of the h's out, that leaves us with h all over h. And now you see that we have h times a bunch of stuff on the numerator, all divided by h. The h's are going to cancel, and we're just going to have the limit as h goes to 0 of 2x plus h. So now in this case, we can actually just go ahead and think about essentially plugging 0 in for h, and that will just give us 2x. So this is going to be the derivative of x squared plus 2, based on using this limit definition. So I do want to kind of point out here, whenever you're using this limit definition, typically your answer is going to have an x in it. That's not wrong. That doesn't mean that we got to the wrong answer. A lot of times these problems, your answer is not just going to be a number. Now it could be. Think about what we just did here. We just found the derivative of this function. So if our original function was a function that its derivative was a constant or a number, then yes, we would just have a number at the end. But typically, a derivative of a function is going to have your variable x in it in the end. So we typically are going to see an x in our answer. However, we should not have any h's. If you have an h at this point, you're not at a final answer. You either made a mistake somewhere along the way with the limit, or maybe you didn't properly evaluate, the h going to 0 component of your limit. But in the end, it's okay to have x's in your answer. You shouldn't have h or any other variable, really. It would really just be whatever the variable of your original function was will oftentimes be in your final answer. Just like taking the derivative of a function using, power rule, product rule, quotient rule. Those are all things we'll get to in future videos. But this is how you can do that using the limit definition. So I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, do me a huge favor, hit that thumbs up button down below, subscribe to the channel, and go check out the Elite Guide to AP Calculus AB, either using the link in the description or the pinned comment below, or scan that QR code on your screen. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.